Before we started, you just heard that we're going to record this webinar. If you are, that's fine because you're not on screen, but that's for us to share it if anyone was registering for this webinar but couldn't attend. And we're going to wait a few minutes until more people join us. So thanks for your patience.
Okay, everybody, welcome to our town hall this evening, late afternoon. We're glad that you're all here. As we said, this is being recorded in case you want to hear it again, or we have other community members who are not able to be here and would like to observe the webinar. So today, we're going to be talking about services for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, and Ukrainians. And I'm Dana Gold, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at JFCS. And I am, like you, waiting for all of this to be unraveled as our team gets to talk about today what kinds of services and what we can do as JFCS to provide for clients who are in your programs. So we're just going to go around. We're going to introduce ourselves first. This is the agenda, and we're going to be going through what are the options for bringing people to the United States in different ways, manners, and then we're going to talk about the services and benefits according to the designated country that the U.S. is in relationship with in this process. So the first thing we're just going to do is go around and introduce ourselves. Becky, why don't you start, and then we'll jump to Yvonne and then to Jamie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here with you today. I'm Becky, and I'm the director of the JFCS Career Services Department.
Hello, everyone. I am Yvonne Smith-Tapia. I'm the director of Refugee and Immigrant Services Department.
And hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Engler, the Director of the Immigration Legal Services Department here at JFCS.
Wonderful. So now we're going to be diving into some information about community sponsorship, and it is done in a number of different ways. So Yvonne is going to help us unpack all of this, talking about one aspect of it, and then Jamie's going to help us figure out another. So Yvonne, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So you may have heard all of these terms in the news, in the TV, from local agencies. So to start talking about all of these options for the different people that are coming to the United States, I'm going to start defining community sponsorship programs. These are an umbrella that describe different models of resettlement of refugees that involve community members. The community co-sponsorship is a very specific pathway for faith-based organizations or community groups that commit in a non-legally binding manner to partner with a resettlement agency to help refugees resettle into the United States. I'm going to share a little bit more about that option and how JFCS is implementing this program. On the other hand, we have private sponsorship. Private sponsorship is a way in which groups or individuals can, or permanent residents from the United States can apply to sponsor a refugee into the United States. With this option, Jamie is going to talk a little bit more about how specific individuals can start this process. You may have heard that since the Taliban took over Afghanistan, the government launched this sponsor circles program. One of those programs was for Afghans that is already closed. The other options are now for Ukrainians and for Cuban, Haitians, and Nicaraguans and Venezuelans. The Sponsor Circles program is only available for humanitarian paroles. And then, most recently, the government this year in January launched the new program that it's a pilot program named Welcome Course. I am going to talk a little bit more about this program in a few slides. So this is kind of like the umbrella of concepts for you to kind of get used to or familiarize, because we're going to be talking about those in the upcoming slides. So now it's still me. So co-sponsorship. So as I mentioned a few seconds ago, JFCS launched the co-sponsorship program at the end of 2021. We have partnered with faith-based organizations to provide core services to refugees. So the work that we have been doing for over 80 years, now we are dividing that responsibility with community groups. Why we're doing that? Because the government of the United States has started a way to promote the sponsorship. And because these programs have been very, very successful in countries such as Canada and Germany, where community sponsorship is the main route for refugees to integrate into their community. For JFCS, we have been doing this work where case workers from JFCS provide the case management support and the application to benefits and resources that are more complex. And the faith-based organizations are in charge to provide to refugees cultural orientation, community integration, and services that are more easy for any regular American to understand and to navigate, such as school enrollment, connecting with community resources, helping refugees to understand how to take the bus, helping refugees to go grocery shopping, taking the bus. So this program has been very successful. We will continue to do community co-sponsorship. We currently are partnering with 7 faith-based organizations, and we are in the process of partnering and recruiting more faith-based organizations or community groups to do this work with us. So this is a great way for community groups to engage with refugee resettlement, to provide support. Depending on each group, they can support a family for 6 months or a year, and the community group also has some responsibility to do fundraising, because the support is also with fundings and volunteering and social support. So now, welcome course. As I mentioned, this is a pilot program that the government launched in January 2023. And this is the opportunity for private sponsorship. It's part of private sponsorship, and it's an opportunity for Americans to support a refugee family. Something very important to mention is that this program doesn't involve refugee resettlement agencies. So this process is going through the Community Hub, that it's another organization that is coordinating all of this program. This program has 2 phases. The first phase, that is currently we're in phase 1, it's when individuals that create a group of 5 people want to bring a refugee to the United States. They are matched blindly, that is how you say it, to a refugee family. So they don't know who the refugee family is. The focus at this moment is people from the continent of Africa. So all of the refugees that have been waiting for years and years to come to the United States. In order to qualify for this program, refugees have to be legally designated as refugees by United Nations. So the second phase of this program, that it's meant to be starting mid this year, like maybe after summer, it's when private sponsors can identify refugees to be resettled. Still, those refugees need to be admitted as refugees into the United States. But it could be that a community member in any neighborhood in Pittsburgh says, okay, my church wants to bring my cousin because my cousin has been in a refugee camp for over 10 years and he has all of his paperwork. My church wants to bring this person to the United States. That's phase 2. So in the next slide, I can share a little bit of how is that going to impact the other one, Dana. One more back.
I don't know which way you're going because
No, the other way.
I know.
Sorry.
But what I'm saying is that unfortunately, we're going the wrong direction. Let me stop sharing for just 1 minute.
So one of the things that we wanted to share with all of you is that because refugees are not coming through the United States in this way with welcome course through refugee resettlement agencies, JFCS has limited capacity to provide services. So all of these refugees are not going to have a caseworker from any of the resettlement agencies in Allegheny County. We are not going to be providing case management support to any of these refugees. The sponsor group that we're calling private sponsor group, it's the organization, is the group that is mandated to provide all of these case management services. So referrals to schools, referrals to medical providers, referrals to the benefits office. All of that is going to be done independently from the work that we are doing. We are going to get referrals when the refugees are here. So Jamie's team and Becky's team will get referrals. Yes, that one. So Becky's team and Jamie's team are going to receive referrals from probably the private sponsor organizations or the Welcome Hub or other organizations. The government hasn't really identified how that pathway is going to work. And we are going to be able to provide legal services and employment services. All of the financial support that these refugees are going to receive come from the fundraising that PSOs are going to do. After the 90-day period, that is the resettlement period that generally the US government set, JFCS, we will be able to provide support through our program ISAC. But this support, as many of you already know, ISAC is going to be light case management, or what we call service coordination. So it's not going to be resettlement services as the refugees that come through the pathway of JFCS. And I know this is very confusing, so please, please, please add all of the questions that you have in the chat, and at the end we will answer them.
Okay, Jamie, take it away.
Thank you. As Yvonne was stating, the previous few slides were focused on people coming as refugees. We're going to change gears a little bit and talk about individuals coming on a more temporary conditional basis. And so a lot of the folks that you all have been seeing and serving are coming from these countries that we're talking about specifically, and they are coming not as refugees, but they are coming as humanitarian parolees. And the process for that is different from the way that refugees are brought to the United States. And I want to cover just a little bit about how that process works, whether you're the sponsor who's initiating this process or the beneficiary who will be coming under humanitarian parole, or you're just someone who's interested in learning more about it. I'm hoping that we'll be able to shed some light on this process. And if I don't answer all of your questions in advance, again, please put them in the chat. So the way that individual sponsorship or private sponsorship works is that you have someone here in the United States who has valid immigration status and who wants to bring someone from one of these 5 countries. So we're talking only about folks from Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Ukraine. And the way that process starts is that the individual here in the United States sets up an account, a digital account with USCIS. and they go online and they complete the I-134. Everything is done electronically for these processes, which is good and bad. Cuts down on the processing time, makes it more difficult to upload some of your required support. The sponsor has to be inside the United States. They have to have valid immigration status. That does not mean they have to be a citizen or a permanent resident only, but it means they have to have a status that is going to be, more than a tourist visa or a student visa that's very finite. So someone with TPS would qualify to be an individual sponsor. They have to meet the financial requirements, and that is based on 100% of the federal poverty guidelines for the United States in 2023 currently, so by family size. So if you are a single person and you want to sponsor somebody, the income threshold is much lower than if you're a family of 5 and you want to sponsor a family of 4. And you can sponsor as many people as you have the financial means to do so. Once the application is completed and all of the financial documents and the immigration proof of your status and everything else that they may ask you for, it's pretty invasive, the amount of information they ask you for. And then they also ask for a copy of the passport of the beneficiary who's going to be the intending person traveling to the United States. And then what happens is everything gets submitted, and if USCIS decides that the application and the supporting documentation is sufficient, then they will send an email to the beneficiary. And they will invite that beneficiary in their home country or wherever they happen to be to do their fingerprints and then have an interview. And once the background checks are done and the interview is complete, they will be granted permission to travel between certain dates. And when they arrive at the United States, they'll provide that documentation and their passport to Customs and Border Protection, and they will be given an I-94 that allows them to stay for a maximum of 2 years. Doesn't guarantee 2 years automatically. It means that they can be granted up to 2 years. Right, so this is a little repetitive, but I think it's important to just be very clear. Once the I-134A is approved and the person comes here, those individuals, for the most part, and that we're going to talk a little bit later about benefits to certain populations, and we'll clarify that, but most folks are not going to have access to public benefits. And that is the reason that they have a sponsor filling out financial forms and proving that they can support the individual for the duration of their stay here in the United States. Additionally, they are not being resettled as refugees, so they're not going to get the case management services and help, that refugees would receive from a resettlement program. If they have children who need to be enrolled in school, if they have questions about how to use the bus, like that sort of thing, that's going to be something the sponsors are encouraged to do on their own, and can obviously reach out for help, and we'll help as much as we can. Parolees, humanitarian parolees can work in the United States. However, they still need to have an employment authorization document to prove their right to work in the United States. So when they're arriving, they have an I-94 that technically says they can work, but for an employer to be able to complete an I-9 properly, they're going to need that employment authorization document so that they're doing an appropriate job at documenting the status. So that's where JFCS can help. When humanitarian parolees arrive in the United States, we can help with the employment authorization documents. We can help people who are interested in being a private sponsor to complete and submit the I-134A and all of the supporting documents. And we can answer the questions to the accuracy that we know as of today, because it does change on an ongoing basis.
So before we go any further and start talking about what we do, we want to know who you are and who we're talking to. So I'm just going to launch a really brief one-question poll that basically asks, what brings you here today? So go ahead. We'll see who everyone says they are. Which of the following statements best describe you? Service provider, interested in bringing someone to the United States, an immigrant or new arrival who needs some help, or other. So we'll see who we are. And just I feel like we should play the Jeopardy song, right? Okay, so I would say we're going to just close the poll because it looks like everyone has answered the questions. And we're split between service providers and other. So that's a bit of a mystery who the other are. But we are excited you're here, and we're glad we know who we're speaking to. Before we move on, we're going to now talk about the different services that are available at JFCS for refugees and immigrants coming to this country under normal circumstances. And then we're going to talk about how these different populations that we had talked about, Nicaraguans, Haitians, Venezuelans, Ukrainians, and Cubans, have different access to different services that JFCS or other resettlement agencies provide. We will reiterate here, we're going to answer questions at the end, so don't hesitate to put them into the chat. We'll be looking at them. But we just want to remind everybody, this is a moving target. This is a new process that the United States government has chosen to provide this temporary status and parolees. And we're learning along with everyone else, and that the rules change. So what we're telling you today is the most up-to-date information possible, but things could change in another month, 2 months, 6 months, and we'll just be here continuously to try and help you decipher the latest information going forward. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to turn it back over to Yvonne to talk about what services are available and what we do at our Refugee and Immigrant Services Department.
So in general, my department provides support to refugees that come from the regular pathway, and we are mandated to provide support upon arrival. So we create a plan before even they arrived to make sure that they have all of their basic needs met, and they have a pathway of support through their integration journey. We also have a program that I mentioned earlier, is Immigrant Services and Connections, that provides support to any immigrant that is here in Allegheny County, regardless of their immigration status. That could be an international student that needs connections with a specific service, people that came here with a visa and now they are out of status, or refugees that have been here for a while. For the population that we're talking today, we provide case management services if they are eligible, and we can connect humanitarian parolees with community resources and benefits, again, if they are eligible, through our program ISAC.
Okay, and next, Becky.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to give kind of a brief overview of JFCS Career Services. Again, as Dana said, this is a moving target, but we have a variety of pathways that we're able to provide support. So I'm going to dive a little bit into that, and then again, we'll speak more specifically about each of these 5 populations, because the services they're eligible for on the employment side are actually all different based on, you know, their status and where they're coming from. So in general, with JFCS Career Services, we have a variety of programs that can support job seekers in and around Allegheny County, including immigrants and refugees. And I'll caveat that by saying even now outside of Allegheny County, because very relevant to today's conversation, employment providers on the refugee side are providing remote services to eligible populations who are living outside of Allegheny County. You know, we have already received referrals on our side for individuals living in Washington County, a lot of Haitians, and also individuals in Jefferson County, and we are expecting others. And these are individuals who came through the pathways that Yvonne spoke about earlier, but who are eligible for services. And so our services are in person when they're possible here in Allegheny County, but we're also embarking very newly into remote service provision. And so that's also changing and ebbing and flowing every day, but we're happy to be able to provide that service to folks who are in need. And so each of the populations we're talking about today, the Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, and Ukrainians, could be served through various programs. I'm going to touch on two of them briefly now that are really meant to be geared toward immigrant and refugee populations. And then I'll provide specific details later about who's eligible for what on the career services side. The first program I'll touch on is Matching Grant, which we call MG. This is an early self-sufficiency program that provides cash assistance, intensive case management, and employment services to help individuals and families immediately find and maintain employment. We encourage individuals to enroll in MG as soon as possible. The majority of our MG clients are coming directly through Yvonne's department, through our refugee resettlement program, but we do have the ability to enroll some of the populations we're talking about today outside of resettlement services. Because as Yvonne said, not everyone is eligible for case management services through a resettlement department, but they can be eligible for match grant. And so on the JFCS side, we're trying to enroll families within 30 days of arrival. We're going to talk about that later for those specific populations, but I just want to say for anyone in the room who comes across a family who's newly arrived or is considering sponsorship in the future, it's always good to reach out as soon as you can. The sooner we know someone's coming, that opens the door for eligibility for more programs. Once we pass certain deadlines, like that 31-day deadline, someone might not be eligible for match grant. That doesn't mean we couldn't serve them, but that program kind of gets taken off as an option. So match grant, again, the goal is self-sufficiency, and we work with clients for up through their 8th month after arrival in the country. The next one I wanted to touch on is Refugee Support Services, known to us in the game as RSS. RSS is another employment program that provides job placement and retention assistance, and it also includes a case management component to help clients connect with resources to mitigate barriers. This could be things like childcare, transportation, anything that is preventing or in the way of a client really placing in a job successfully and being able to reach self-sufficiency. Our staff are going to help them navigate that so that they can place in that job, go to work, and be providing for their families. Our goal is for clients to grow their skills and really have success in their job placement here in the US. Clients can utilize RSS services so long as they're eligible for the program for up to 5 years after they arrive in the United States. And so that program is ongoing, and we've had clients who enrolled, gotten a job, something happens 2 years later, they can still come back and receive that service. So that's a really nice offering that allows us to work with folks longer term to help them reach that point of self-sufficiency and stability. The last thing I'll say is clients who aren't able to participate in RSS or MG can still be eligible to receive support through our general career services side of JFCS. And this is really amazing because no matter what program someone's in, they can receive individualized job search support. They can be paired to work directly with an individual who's going to help them navigate job search, prep a resume, prep for an interview, navigate conversations with employers, and build out that career pathway for success. Our goal is really to get every single person on a desired career pathway and reaching the goal that they want to achieve from a work standpoint in this country, whatever that looks like. And along the way, we'll also connect folks to community resources and referrals as needed. So that was not as brief as I wanted, but kind of an overview of the career services side of things. And again, we'll dive a little bit deeper in a bit about which of these populations are eligible for which of these services that I just explained. Thanks.
And now Jamie.
Okay, so as I discussed before, the legal services department, we do a lot of different things for immigrants and refugees when it comes to immigration legal services. Today we're focusing most specifically on the services that this population we're talking about today will be interested in, and that is we can help sponsors or individual people who might be interested in being a sponsor to answer their questions, to fill out the form and upload their evidence. We can, when people arrive as humanitarian parolees, we can help them apply for the employment authorization document. And working, right, goes hand in hand, a social security card and an employment authorization document. They both are required to prove authorization to work in the United States. And they have, USCIS has recently, maybe a version or two ago, embedded the questions into the employment authorization document application to allow folks to request Social Security, issue them a card along with the employment authorization document. So they have to allow USCIS and SSA to communicate about this person's immigration status and their right to have a Social Security number. And then they issue the employment authorization document. And then a week or two later, the individual will receive the Social Security card in the mail. However, if someone has already gone to Social Security Administration and applied for a card, they cannot also have it issued through the EAD application. And then a lot of folks that we see have questions about permanency in the United States. They're coming on what could be a very temporary time period, and what happens if something changes and they need to stay. So our team, we do a lot of consultations about that and help people navigate their options as they exist right now. And that's it for me. Thanks.
So now we come to, how do people coming from these different countries, how are they allowed to receive services from JFCS? So we just talked about all the services, and now we're going to go through country by country and clustering the countries as well, so that you understand what exactly people who are coming to you for services are in need, will be able to access. So first, we're just going to look at this chart, and you can see how it is different depending on the country of origin, right? So Yvonne, we're going to have you jump in now.
Sure. So as you can see, this is one of the most important topics that we wanted to share with you as well, because it's, as Dana mentioned, can be very confusing. As you can see, all of these people from these nationalities come as humanitarian parolees, but not all of them have the same access for benefits. So you can see that all of them, Ukrainian, Cuban, Haitians, Venezuelan, and Nicaraguans, all of them are able to obtain a employment card and Social Security number. So all of them are able to find a job in the United States. However, not all of them are eligible to receive other benefits such as food stamps, refugee cash assistance, and medical assistance. Only Ukrainians, Cubans, and Haitians are eligible for these services. Venezuelan and Nicaraguans are not. So when they come here, they really truly depend on the financial support from their sponsors. We, resettlement agencies, don't have any program that the government give us to provide support to these people from these nationalities. ISAC will be able, as I mentioned before, to provide services for them, but we are not going to be able to connect them with food stamps or with medical support, because they are not eligible for those services. For ORR, that means Office of Refugee Resettlement. So all of the refugees, in addition to the general benefits, have a specific benefits once they arrive to the United States. Those are the program that I mentioned, that is the reception and placement, that this is a program that welcomes them into the United States and help them integrate into their community. None of them are eligible for this program. The government, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the specific programs when we go in a few slides more in detail about the services that we provide. Employment programs, as Becky mentioned a few minutes ago, only Ukrainians and Cuban and Haitians are eligible to be enrolled in Match Grant and RSS. Becky will explain that more later, but that means that only Ukrainian, Cuban, and Haitians can have employment specialist that provides support and light case management when they are connected with a job. Venezuelans and Nicaraguans can't find a job in the United States, but they won't be able to be enrolled in these programs. The career services will be able to provide additional support, but not through the avenue of programs set by the federal government through ORR. And Preferred Communities, it's a program that we have for specific individuals that have medical needs, intellectual needs, that are elderly, single parents, unaccompanied minors, or other characteristics that make them more vulnerable. So only Ukrainians and Cuban and Haitians are eligible for these programs. And I just want to say that there are some caveats with these programs as well, because it also depends on other factors as when they arrive and other eligibility. So as Dana mentioned, sometimes this is a conversation that is case by case that we have to do when we receive a referral and we receive the paperwork and the documents that the individuals arrive with. And sometimes because of those characteristics, even though ideally they will be able to enroll, sometimes we can't. So Ukrainians. So I was mentioning this before. Ukrainians, because of the government decided, this is sometimes very arbitrary. The government decided that resettlement agencies will receive funding to provide case management support for 90 days to Ukrainians humanitarian parolees. So as I mentioned before, they are eligible to apply for general benefits and also to apply to cash assistance or match grant. It's very, very important that when we receive a referral for a Ukrainian humanitarian parolee, that their sponsors don't enroll them into cash assistance, because that could be a barrier to enroll them in match grant. We can also be able to connect them with community resources and to apply to other benefits. As I mentioned, we can provide 90 days of case management services. We work with the sponsors as well, because the sponsors have the main responsibility to provide services to this family and support, but sometimes the sponsor situation changes. We have had cases where a sponsor committed to bring a Ukrainian family here, but the family is here, their situation changes, their financial changes, the relationship changes. And then we are able to provide some financial support when those situations happen. Becky's department can provide employment support for them, and Jamie team can always help them with apply for their employment authorization document and the form I-134A. I don't know how you said it, Jamie, correctly. So this is kind of like the most comprehensive population, that the comprehensive support that we provide to these humanitarian parolees. Ukrainians have, as you can see, more benefits than the other ones.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about Nicaraguans and Venezuelans. And just a caveat here, we are not privy to why the federal government determines who gets what. That's not our decision. That's something that's made on the federal level. And so we really can't answer why some groups get one thing and other groups don't. But, we're just here to try and help you understand what they are. But go ahead, Becky, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Dana. So I'm going to talk to us about Nicaraguans and Venezuelans. And like Dana said, this information changes all the time. So maybe at some point down the road, these two populations will be eligible for different services, but this is a snapshot of where we are really right now. So unlike the Ukrainians, Nicaraguans and Venezuelans are not eligible for mainstream and ORR funded benefits like refugee cash assistance, refugee medical assistance. They're not eligible to enroll in those ORR career programs that we spoke about earlier, like RSS and Match Grant. Nicaraguans and Venezuelans also are not eligible for resettlement and case management support, but they can receive assistance through ISAC, our Immigrant Services and Connections program, which can help them with things like getting a social security card, making a referral maybe for that EAD process we talked about earlier that they're eligible for. ISAC could help with making that referral, enrolling in school, connecting with other community resources. For whatever they might be eligible for, our ISAC team would be able to help connect them and make referrals on their behalf, depending on eligibility for certain programs. On the career services side, Nicaraguans and Venezuelans are eligible for employment authorization cards. They can apply for that EAD, as Jamie mentioned and Yvonne touched on as well, and they can work. So on the career services side, they can work with our general career services team. What this looks like is different than what someone would receive through RSS or Match Grant. We know those programs have case management components. On the career services side, this means that a Nicaraguan or Venezuelan could be paired with a career counselor, but there's not that case management component. our staff are really putting the responsibility back on sponsors who might be working with these individuals to help with some of that case management. And again, Isaac is helping with referrals, but we're not going to be able to have the capacity to do true case management. The focus for career services would be on, building skills, getting that resume in place, helping prep for an interview, and connecting to local employers. But it's not going to be as in-depth or necessarily even as time intensive as maybe someone would receive through RSS or match grant. So I want that to be clear. But so long as they have their EAD and they have their social security card, we can work with individuals to find work. So that's a real bonus and something that we're excited about. And we've already had some folks come to us who fall into this category, and we're excited to serve them and keep working with them. So I think it's just important to understand the distinction of what that means. And then lastly, the legal services team can help get that EAD application in the I-134A as they could with Ukrainians. You'll notice the legal immigration service role really is pretty standard across all of these populations. I think the biggest differences really come in the public benefit eligibility, the resettlement side and case management eligibility, and then what they'd qualify for on the career services side. So Dana, I'm going to have you forward to the next slide as well, which is our Cuban and Haitian population, because I will also be talking about them.
Well,
Oh, we slipped
every
one
time
ahead.
I do this, the program won't let me go backwards. So now I have to go back out. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
That's okay.
Right.
You can do this. That's fine.
Okay.
And we'll just keep talking a little bit about this. As a reminder to everyone in the room, we are seeing your questions come through the chat. Lots of good questions. I know you all cannot see them, but we are fielding them and we're excited to answer them for you. Our presentation is being recorded today, and we'll make sure to share out the slides and any other relevant information with everyone here, because it's important for you to be able to refer back to this, knowing that it may well change in the near future. But at least we're talking about it now and can provide kind of where we're at currently. So the last population are Cubans and Haitians. This is a complete flip from the previous slide of Nicaraguans and Venezuelans. Cubans and Haitians are eligible for public benefits. So they're able to take advantage of those mainstream benefits like SNAP, TANF, refugee cash assistance, as well as medical assistance, those public benefits that a lot of the other populations haven't necessarily been eligible for. Cubans and Haitians can take advantage of when they come into the country. From a resettlement and case management perspective, they might be eligible for some things, but not for others, depending on whether or not they have sponsors. And so we have it broken down here into bullet points A and B. If someone has a sponsor, that case management component is going to be lighter. It's going to be shorter because, again, with this new model, the goal is really to put some of this responsibility on the sponsors. For those who don't have sponsors or family in the United States, they can receive a longer amount of services. So that's going to be case by case dependent to know what we would be able to provide in that regard. The last thing I'll say about this, we understand on the services side that having a sponsor doesn't necessarily mean that the sponsor is stepping in and stepping up and actually doing all of these things. There have been instances of sponsorship breakdown, and we encourage people, if that's happening, to talk to us and find out if that changes what we might be able to do or provide in terms of services or even financial assistance. But we all know it's not a perfect process. This is just what the government has laid out right now in terms of eligibility and what we can provide. On the career services side, Cubans and Haitians are eligible for enrollment into the matching grant program or RSS. They can get those EADs and social security cards. And again, we like to know about people sooner rather than later. If we know about someone who's in the country and they're new within their first 30 days, 31 days of arrival, we can get them into matching grant potentially. And if not, they can go into the RSS program and receive employment support, barrier mitigation, as well as like case management. And so it just depends on how soon we find out about someone, but they are eligible to come to our career services team. If anyone knows a Cuban or Haitian who's been here longer than 5 years, they can come to our career services side. In some way, shape, or form, we'll be able to assist. There are a lot of factors that determine how, but know that they can receive services. And then just like with other populations, they can get that help from our legal team to apply for their employment authorization document and fill out that form I-34A as part of the process. And so we know we went over this pretty quickly and it's a lot of information, but we're hoping it gives you a good snapshot of who's eligible for what, when, for how long, that sort of thing.
So we've used a lot of acronyms, and one of the things that you are going to want to do is to reach out to the people who've been able to guide you through this. So we have questions. If you have questions about Ukrainians and Ukrainian parole, you can contact Yvonne Smith-Tapia. There's her email address. If you have questions about Cubans, if you have Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, Becky's the one to reach out to. And if you have questions about a relative or friend that you want to bring to the United States, person you sponsored who needs help with employment authorization documentation, please reach out to Jamie Englert. In addition, we have the information that you may want for contacting us. Our phone number, the JFCS office, email, social media. I would ask you, Yvonne, if you could right now to put into the chat the email and contact information for Isaac, because we have not listed that here.
I can't. I
Okay.
only can text the panelist and the host.
Okay, well then.
Sorry. But I also wanted to say that if people have questions about Welcome Core or co-sponsorship, please send me an email. I will be more than happy to share more information about those community sponsorship programs.
Okay, so what I'm going to start doing now is I'm going to start going through the questions, and we're going to be answering them. We also would like to be able to share with you the DHS, the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services website, refugeesinpa.org. Charlotte Fry has offered that, as well as contact information for people. But also our Isaac phone number and web address we should get up there as well. So one of the questions I'll start with is, what medical assistance can sponsors connect their beneficiary to? Are sponsors financially responsible for the health insurance? And is each group eligible for Medicaid? So I think, Yvonne, that would be best for you.
Yes, so the sponsors will be responsible for covering the humanitarian parole with the health insurance. So if it's one of those populations that is not qualified for refugee health insurance, so yes. And I guess that they have to go through what it's called Obamacare and see what they will be eligible for. And the sponsor will be eligible to pay, responsible to pay for it. And what was the first part of the question? I lost it.
What kinds of medical care, Medicaid, is available to people?
Yeah, so I guess it depends, that it needs to go to market. What is the name of the marketplace? Marketplace, to see specifically for that person, age and other characteristics, what is the health insurance options for them.
I think in PA, our site is called Penny now.
Yes, Penny. Thank you so
Penny.
much, Becky. Yes.
Right.
So there was a question about ESL. One of our providers online here has been getting an influx of Haitian English as a second language students, and they were wondering if there's a support group, or will be one, such as the Venezuelan support group that JFCS runs. We have the absolute honor of running support groups for different community members who are all from the same country. And we look for new populations who are coming, and then we form support groups using community leaders who speak that language. And then that group is able to bind together to support one another, to share resources with one another, and to come together in ways that feel mutually beneficial. And so we do have support groups for a wide variety of people, but there was a question of whether or not there would be one for perhaps Haitians coming. Not yet.
No, not yet. And the tricky part with this, and one of the key strong features of support groups, is that they are led by community members. So one of the sometimes challenges that we have is to find bilingual community leaders that want to run these groups. These groups are not run by JFCS staff. We trained leaders to run the groups and to provide services to them. So we provide technical assistance. So at the moment, we haven't had the chance to connect with a bilingual Haitian community leader to train him and her to provide, to facilitate these groups. But we are always, as Dana mentioned, keeping a list of groups that we want to start. So we are doing a lot of community outreach to see if we can start more groups in the upcoming months.
Mm-hmm. And so the other question is, and I think Jamie, you might be best suited for guessing at this one, is what other groups might become eligible for private sponsorship?
Yeah, I don't know that anyone can guess that. It seems to be that there's not a lot of notification given or planning implemented in advance of these announcements. So it's really hard to anticipate which countries could be added next. This really wasn't used on a widespread scale at all until last year when the war broke out in Ukraine. And that's when they first created this I-134A form under the United for Ukraine program. That's the first time that humanitarian parole had ever been used on a wide scale by country basis. Previous to that, it had just been a very small number across the country for like urgent life or death situations. So I don't think I'm qualified to guess.
No.
But I can tell you this, when we find out, we will share it with you.
Right, right. And as you have seen, perhaps in the New York Times recently, this is surmised as a new way that the Biden administration is attempting to deal with immigration. And so this is, I think in some ways a pilot. We did talk earlier, Jamie, if someone does get parole status, are they required to stay the whole 2 years, or might they come for a few months and then decide to go back? Could you talk to that a little bit?
Sure. The duration of stay is not mandated. Like, it's the time period that they are allowed to stay, not required to stay. So they can stay 1 day, they can stay 1 week, they can stay right up until the very last day of their the validity of their document. That's a personal choice that they can make based on their life circumstances.
And I've got another one for you, so don't turn off your mute. How long is it taking for people to get their employment authorization?
Yeah, that's a really tricky question to answer. Normal EADs, and there's no specific way to track Cubans, Haitians, Venezuelans, and Nicaraguans at this point, because we haven't done enough of a volume of them and received the EADs back yet to gauge that on our personal basis. USCIS is saying anywhere from 7 months to 17.5 months is the averaging processing time for an EAD based on which service center the applications get sent to for processing. I can tell you this from experience, the Ukrainians who have arrived on parole status, their EADs are coming in just over a month. So their EADs are definitely being fast-tracked. I have not yet, like I said, done enough of the volume in the other populations to know exactly how long that's taking. My hope is that they will expedite all of them universally for all parolees, but I have not yet seen evidence of that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. And Becky, here's one for you. What about youth? Can you tell us about youth who may want to participate in Learn and Earn? What kind of documentation would a young person need?
Right, that's a great question. So the youth who actually, so long as the youth is able to obtain that EAD and that social security card, they could potentially be eligible for Learn and Earn. I know on the JFCS side, we have great coordination between our youth services team, our career services team, and our refugee resettlement team to identify youth who could benefit from the program. I don't think it's so much a documentation issue for participation in Learn and Earn with our immigrant and refugee youth. I would say one of the bigger challenges is actually the language barrier. If they have that EAD and that social security card and their families are meeting the income eligibility, for Learn and Earn, which kind of aligns with TANF eligibility. I might be getting it slightly off, but it's in that threshold. The biggest barrier is finding work sites that are going to be able to work with someone who has a lower English proficiency. My department ran Learn and Earn last year, and we did it exclusively for a lot of refugee and immigrant kids, which was great. That was the bigger challenge, the language barrier. So I'm putting this out there. If any of you are providers, or you know of providers or employers who would be willing to work with youth who have a lower level of English proficiency, let us know. Let Partner for Work know. I know Monique from Partner for Work is in this call with us today, and I know they're really looking for work sites that can host a diverse range of students who are wanting to participate in this program. It's a great way to help earn income and support families. The work sites are going to be the biggest barrier there. And so I'm putting an ask out to the group. If you know someone, reach out to us. We're happy to make a connection because these youth can participate. It's just a matter of finding them a site.
Wonderful. And that's basically all the questions. I did put the email slide up here again because we had someone say that they might know someone who could run a support group for Haitians and Ukrainians. So that would be, you'd reach out to Yvonne with that name. So
Yes, Brandy, I already typed down your email, so I will be sending an email to connect with you, and also to Sharon that says that Sharon shared her email, so we will be sending an email to connect.
yes. And so thank you everybody for being with us. This brings us to the end of our webinar, and we're grateful that you were able to come today, and we hope that this has been helpful. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.